Hello and welcome. Today we find ourselves in a city right outside of Guangzhou, China, which can only mean one thing. There is a new Xpeng for us to review. That's right, we're going to be checking out the newest model from the Chinese electric automaker. In this case, the Xpeng G6 electric coupe SUV. This thing is aimed very squarely at the Tesla Model Y, which I promise you I'm going to prove throughout this video. But for now, let's get started.
With hands-on test drives and reviews of exciting Chinese market vehicles, Wheelsboy is the #1 source for China auto insights. Be sure to check us out on Instagram and Facebook. Xpeng had yet to announce specific pricing for the G6 as of filming, only saying that it will be priced between 200 and 300,000 RMB, or about 28 to 42,000 USD when it hits the Chinese market. For context, a Model Y is priced at about 37 to 51,000 here in China. Day one of the two-day launch event found us lapping a racetrack just outside of Guangzhou. To add a bit of stakes to the event, Xpeng also brought along a Tesla Model Y Performance so we could drive them back to back. I was only able to drive each car for one in and out lap, so I couldn't explore these subtle nuances that separate the two, but it was enough to realize, much to my surprise, that the differences weren't that great. Both the G6 and the Model Y use a double wishbone front suspension and a 5-link rear, but the G6 boasts a 50-50 weight distribution. The Xpeng felt well balanced, but was tuned a bit softer than the Model Y and felt a little less eager to be thrown into corners due to its lighter, less direct steering. We were only able to drive the dual-motor performance version of the G6, which makes 358 kilowatts and 660 newton-meters of torque. That's one more kilowatt and one more newton-meter than the Model Y Performance. Do you think that's a coincidence? Because I don't. Despite that tiny advantage, the official 0 to 100 km/h time of 3.9 seconds is 0.2 seconds behind the Model Y. No wonder the Y felt ever so slightly faster off the line than the G6. But a slight difference is all I could discern in pretty much every area of performance. The G6 held its own against the Model Y, even if neither of them really belongs on the track.
It's day 2 of the Xpeng G6 launch event, which means a new Hawaiian shirt and a battery demonstration. The G6 now comes standard with Xpeng's 800-volt charging architecture, silicon carbide by the way, and they've decided to give us a bit of a demonstration, a bit of a competition, and you'll never guess who they chose as the competitor.
Xpeng claims that the combination of their 800-volt platform and S4 ultra-fast charger can take the G6's 87.5 kWh battery from 10 to 80% in just 19 minutes. But this test was to illustrate their claim that the platform is also 50 to 80% faster than 400-volt platforms, even when using a third-party fast charger. Indeed, when charging from a similar state of charge and using the same charging station, the Xpeng charged faster than the Tesla and regained more range during a 5-minute charging period. Xpeng has yet to release official range numbers for the G6, only saying that it will be up to 755 kilometers on the CLTC cycle.
The G6 is within a few millimeters of the Tesla Model Y in pretty much every dimension, including height, length, width, and wheelbase. In fact, it has the exact same wheelbase as the Model Y. Some would even say that the styling is also a little bit reminiscent of the Model Y, particularly from the side and looking at the rear end, but this is one thing you'll never see on a Model Y, an orange paint color. This you can get on the car from the factory, by the way. You're also never going to see a front end like this. This is Xpeng's so-called robot face. Not a particularly elegant terminology, but it is accurate. Around the side here, we have a black piece of trim that runs along the top of the wheel arch. Now, I think it's obviously meant to accentuate the wheel arch, the aggressive lines of it, but to me, it just ends up looking like vestigial body cladding. The Xpeng G6 has a charge port door that opens like this. While not marketed as the sportiest Xpeng model, this is the first one that we've ever seen with an electrically deployable wing.
The G6 is a high-tech little orange slice, though the rear styling does veer a bit towards the humpbacked look of some Mercedes coupe SUVs, even with that cool spoiler. No official measurements for the cargo area under that hump quite yet, but it certainly looked to be in line with the rest of its category.
Xpeng refers to the design concept on the interior of the G6 as the circle of life. The result is a very, very simple interior. Material quality, I would say, is maybe not up to par with their P7 sedan, and certainly not with the much more expensive G9 SUV. However, there are some soft touch areas to be sure, and a decent amount of the increasingly popular cloth material that we see in cars like the Neo ET5.
Our test car came with a heated and cooled front row, but unlike the Model Y, there were no heated second row seats.
Here between the center console, you will have dual wireless charging pads a la Tesla Model 3 and Model Y. Above that, you have your center screen. Now, Xpeng hasn't announced specific information about the screen size, but I can tell you with supreme confidence, this is the 14.96-inch screen that you will find in the Xpeng G9, except for that car has two of them. Directly in front of me, there's a 10.2-inch instrument cluster screen and a new steering wheel design, this time a kind of chubby-looking two-spoke unit.
That center screen uses the Xmart operating system backed by the venerable Qualcomm Snapdragon 8155 processor. Xpeng has always had some of the best UI and UX in the business, and the G6 is no exception.
The G6 has quite a bit of space in the back seat, starting with the space between my head and this overhead glass, one piece, not openable, as you can see. You also have a good amount of leg room, about a fist and a half for me. I'm 5'9", 1.75 meters tall. I think just as importantly for comfort, you can also adjust the rake on these seats like so. In between the seats, fold down center armrest, very soft, but doesn't appear to have anything on it until we hit that button and we deploy our cup holder. Finally, between the seats, two Type-C USB charging ports. Driving a car like this on the racetrack only has so much value when you're simply trying to assess its viability as an EV commuter car, but thankfully, we've had plenty of time to drive it on the road as well.
Perhaps unsurprisingly, some of the very characteristics that made the G6 slightly less fun to drive on the track than the Model Y serve to make it slightly more comfortable as a commuter.
Take the suspension, for example. Yes, it was definitely too soft for the racetrack and softer than the Model Y, noticeably so, but out here on the road, that means that it rides more comfortably, all without being floaty. Don't get me wrong, I still miss the heavier, more direct steering of the Tesla Model Y, and I suspect that there are certain buyers who are still going to prefer its a little bit firmer suspension, but you're not going to be able to say that this car isn't very, very comfortable.
The acceleration of the Y was slightly more aggressive on the track, but the difference was negligible on the street, where you rarely use more than 30% of the accelerator pedal.
The G6 comes with one pedal driving, true one pedal driving, which means that it will bring the car completely to a halt without having to touch the brake pedal, just like a Tesla. I think this is the best option for an EV, at least the availability of a one pedal driving system.
Our time with the G6 included a stint on the highway, so we checked out the latest version of XNGP, Xpeng's ADAS with on-ramp to off-ramp navigation and automatic overtaking. XNGP features 31 sensors, including dual LiDAR units and dual high-precision positioning units. Those get their smarts from dual NVIDIA Orin X chips with up to 508 TOPS computing power.
One thing I really appreciate about this latest version of XNGP is the fact that it uses the camera built into the A-pillar here to monitor your eye line. That means it's no longer as simple as just wiggling the steering wheel every once in a while in order to trick the system into thinking you're paying attention. If I look away, for example like this, for a few seconds, the system will remind me via the speakers that are built into the headrest here that I need to monitor the road situation.
XNGP proved to be very reliable during our journey, even once we got closer to the city and traffic picked up considerably. It maintained good following distances, and unlike earlier iterations, it wasn't paralyzed by fear when trying to change lanes in nearly bumper-to-bumper traffic. Xpeng also recently launched XNGP City, the company's latest generation of urban driver assistance system. I tried the beta version of the system last summer when it was called CNGP. It was impressive, but not quite ready for prime time, with sudden, uncomfortable braking inputs and slow, conservative lane changes.
Today's journey is about 32 minutes, around 14.5 kilometers, around 10 miles. So we're not going to be able to get a hugely comprehensive look at the system, but enough to get an idea of how it compares with other similar systems. In particular, I'm also interested to see how it compares to the Huawei Inside system that I've already tried in the Avatar 1.1 and the ArcFox Alpha S.
The Huawei system was smoother and more comfortable to use than CNGP, however it was also more likely to demand that I take over when conditions weren't perfect.
Not sure what just happened there. I think car wanted to make a lane change. It felt as though I disagreed maybe, and so I decided it was just going to quit out of NGP. A little bit different than what would often happen with the Huawei Inside system, which would basically look at the situation and say, I can't handle this, you take over please.
I would continue to have this same experience throughout my time with XNGP City, only later did I realize why it was happening.
So I think I finally figured out why it is that the system keeps canceling itself, keeps exiting XNGP. It would seem that it has to do with the fact that you have to apply a certain level of pressure to the wheel. Too much, and when the car tries to make a lane change, there's too much resistance, and then it exits XNGP. However, if you have not enough pressure on the wheel, it will continuously remind you to keep applying pressure. That's a safety protocol, I understand that. But I feel like there has to be a better adjustment, kind of an in-between level where you can rest your hands on the steering wheel and put a little weight on them like you would normally do while driving, but without interacting or interfering with the way the system works.
It wasn't all bad, however. I immediately began to notice that the new XNGP had better braking behavior than the first generation, much closer to an experienced driver than a scared teenager. XNGP was also more assertive than CNGP, making lane changes much more quickly and reliably, even in heavy traffic. Overall, XNGP is a step in the right direction. There are plenty of issues to sort out, and I personally wouldn't feel that comfortable using it in anything apart from the most boring bumper-to-bumper traffic, but it seems to prioritize safety in a way that I haven't seen in similar systems. That should give the company time to iron out the wrinkles, while also protecting everyone on the road.
Xpeng's last two model launches, the P5 and the G9, were, let's be honest, not particularly successful. That first car was too boring and the second was too expensive. It's gotten to the point now where the company's future is somewhat in doubt. That's why I think that this car is coming at just the right time. This returns the company to a price point where they have been very successful and comfortable, namely their very successful P7 sedan. With this price, these features, and looks like this, I expect this thing to be a bigger seller for them than their last two models.